But Mark, let's finish up the podcast talking about a topic where I mentioned at the top of the show that this is probably the most clickbaity thing that we are talking about today.
To which I blame ESPN, not us.
Actually, the ones that came out with this, or the one that said it, was Jason Whitlock, actually, on FS1.
So I blame
Speak
them.
for yourself. And he had said, this was last week, but we couldn't talk about it because we had to finish our previews, where he believes that Odell Beckham is overrated.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pass it to you. Do you think Odell Beckham is overrated?
So, overrated, no. I wouldn't say he's overrated, but I will say that I think people are expecting too much out of Odell. I think people are seeing... They think of the rookie year, and they think of the highlight reel catches. And I know that his sophomore year was better than his rookie year. But they think of those amazing catches that he can do. And they just kind of assume that, well, because of that, the New York Giants should be a Super Bowl winning team. And there's more to it than just a great wide receiver, one good wide receiver.
He's got arguably one of the better quarterbacks, or one of the best quarterbacks in the league.
Depends who you ask. When it comes to equal Manning.
Got 2 rings. Can beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
And now they have, they got Shepard, who is hurt. They have Brandon Marshall out there. So they definitely have good pieces around Odell as well. But people are just kind of assuming that Odell is a great wide receiver, therefore they should be the best. But, ask Larry Fitzgerald how being a good wide receiver works out when it comes to Super Bowls. Ask Julio Jones how it works out. A.J. Green. A lot of these guys who are great wide receivers are not going and winning Super Bowls. They catch the ball, and they get touchdowns, they get yards, first downs, and all that.
Ask
That's
Des
great.
Bryant how it's been working.
Yeah, seriously. But that's not enough. Is Odell overrated? No, I wouldn't say he is, but I think we need to all stop expecting the world out of a guy, because he will get you 1,300 yards. He will get you double-digit touchdowns every year. But he's also a little bit of a hothead at times. He's also a diva, or Devo, I should say.
Well, it comes with the position.
Yeah, wide receivers are. And that's okay. All this is fine. Overrated? No, I'm not willing to say he's overrated.
I'm going to say this, and the reason why we asked the question like we did was because that's what Jason Whitlock had said in his, is that Odell is overrated. I think what the question should be is Odell Beckham overhyped? Overhyped, different than overrated, because if you were to ask me, Ricky, is he overrated? I might say maybe a little. And by I say that, meaning he can't be the only one, but you're going to be like, Ricky plays wide receiver. He doesn't play quarterback. So obviously he's going to rely on other people, because he's got to have someone that gets him the ball, and that person has to have a 5 set of people that keep him upright so that he can get Odell the ball.
Yeah.
I think the better question is he overhyped? Where I would say yes, Odell Beckham has been overhyped since his rookie year. Since that year when he made that one-handed catch, that was his kind of, hello, I am in the league. And ever since then, we have been all over Odell Beckham. And it has just been, the hype train has been so real. And one of the quotes that I know Whitlock said that got everybody in a jumble was basically, he's like, take the gold locks on top of Odell's head, shave him off, and you won't know who he is. Basically saying that the only thing is his fame, like his hair, is what is keeping him. Like, that is his fame, is his hair at this point. Which, I mean, he's in the Head and Shoulders commercials. You see him more and more as one of the faces of the NFL. And I'm not saying he shouldn't be, but I think that he might be a little overhyped when it comes to what he has been since his rookie season. Because really the only thing that I'm thinking of is, like, if we're thinking great things he has, yeah, his stats are good. And I'm not saying that he's a trash wide receiver. However, if he didn't make that spectacular catch, is he as popular as he is today?
Well, he's made plenty of spectacular catches.
No, but like if he didn't make that catch where it was like way back here with the
I think
two
he would
fingers.
still be really popular because he is a great weapon to have in fantasy football. So fantasy fans would love him. New York fans would love him. He's going to be on highlight reels no matter what. Now, I think he becomes more in the Julio Jones category then instead of the absolute superstar. Julio Jones, not saying he's not necessarily a superstar because Falcons fans are already angry at me. You know, he's going to be the guy who gets his job done, does a great job. You buy his jersey, and that's all. You'll hear from him again on Sunday. And I think that's what you kind of would.
But Odell is
hope
in
to
that
get out of Odell
superstar
again.
level of like popularity.
Yeah, and he also puts himself out there a little bit, and when he might not even mean to, really. So I think your rephrasing of overhyped is a great move because that's really what it comes down to more. And people kind of expect him to single-handedly get stuff done, and it's really not the case for a wide receiver. Wide receivers really can't do it. You know, how many Super Bowls did Megatron get? How many real playoff wins did Megatron get?
0.
Because that's one of the best wide receivers out there, and he's the guy who really started the whole just be big thing.
Just jump up and get the ball. Just jump up and get it. Things that like Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey made a living on in Chicago. You know what? I'm big. Just throw it up there. I'll go grab it.
Yeah,
I will go and grab it. And the thing with Odell, I think it like with the overrated to overhyped, because that's what we're not talking necessarily about his skill, because he is a very skilled wide receiver. It's his popularity that we're talking about. And I feel like I'm glad you brought up Julio Jones, because Julio Jones to me, phenomenal wide receiver, not a superstar, or not like that mega superstar, I'll say, to where he has his fan base in Atlanta. He has a solid fan base out of Atlanta.
And people know he's good. No one's going to deny that he's
people know
good
his
wide
name.
receiver.
People know he's good, but he's not that mega superstar to where he's in the head and shoulders and like more people, like more little kids. If you ask them what wide receiver they want to be, I bet you the higher percentage say Odell Beckham than they say Julio Jones, unless they're a Falcon fan or grow up in Atlanta.
Yeah. I agree.
But, I mean, that's where I think his popularity has gotten so high to where we're talking about more than just his skill. We're talking about the Head and Shoulders commercial, like Jason Whitlock said, bringing up his hair into the conversation. Last year, the whole drama with him in the kicking net, where he kicked it, got mad at it, ended up proposing to it and making up with the kicking net later in the season. Then even look at the playoff game. They lose that playoff game, and what was it? Did he headbutt a locker, or he threw his helmet against the locker? Basically threw a little hissy fit in the locker room after losing the playoff game. Odell is a player that, because his popularity is so high, we're going to obviously look at those, and that's why I asked the question, is he overhyped? Where me, I'm saying, yeah, he kind of is. A little bit overhyped, because he's not going to be that wide receiver where it's like, put it on me, I'm going to go up. And yeah, he might do it for a drive, but I'm willing this team. Like, game's on the line, put it on me. No, that's why they had to feel like they brought in Brandon Marshall, because that's one of the big things why I'm higher on this Giants team this year. Because now that it's like I said in our preview of them, now that they've got Brandon Marshall on the outside, it's either going to take away from Odell, but then I'm like, no, they're still going to put the same coverage on Odell. It's going to free up Brandon Marshall. And that's the thing, and it kind of goes into that kind of conversation of good wide receivers. They don't have to do it all, because just if they're taking attention away from other wide receivers, if your other wide receivers can capitalize on that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the combination between these two. They both are guys who can get double-digit touchdowns, guys who can get 14 to 1,500 yards. So it's great. And, I mean, you would love to have Shepard out there healthy. You would love to have that. So you have three great wide receivers. It's a deadly offense. Odell really doesn't have to do as much this year. And I hope that if his production goes down, that people don't say, hey, I told you he was overrated, because that's definitely not the case. So for me, it really just comes down to this when it comes to Odell. We're putting too much on him. We're expecting too much from him. We got to remember that these past couple of years, Eli Manning's thrown a shit ton of interceptions, and that costs a team games. This team was not able to move the ball forward and not able to score enough this past year. That costs them games, and I'm not putting the blame on Odell Beckham Jr. for that. A lot of that blame should be on Eli Manning, because Eli Manning made some dumb decisions this past year.
Do you remember
this defense bails the team out quite a bit?
Do you remember when we ranked wide receivers before we did our previews?
Yeah.
Remember when we did that segment? Do you remember where you had Odell?
Not on my list.
Did you have because I couldn't remember who had him as the honorable mention. Me or you?
I don't think I meant I probably honorably mentioned him, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because I know on mine he was not I don't think he was the number one wide receiver on my list. I want to say Julio Jones.
Well, my big thing
Antonio Brown was my number one.
My big thing for Odell is simply the fact that, I mean, now with Shepard not there, or I don't really know when he's going to come back and when he's going to be fully healthy, but Brandon Marshall's going to get so much attention. He's going to be such a wide open target that the production's going to have to drop for Odell, and that's okay. It's all right if you don't have one guy getting 1,500 yards, if you have two guys who are instead both getting 1,000 yards each. You're still going to gain 500 yards out of it. So I don't think that's such a bad thing if Brandon Marshall takes away from Odell a little bit, because especially then, because, hey, maybe that frees Odell up a little bit.
And I'm even looking in the comment section to that video, and I'm going to throw out, this is basically a way too late replying to the comments type of a thing. But just to, some of the ones that gave us rankings. First off, I'm giving some shout-outs here. Blake Bortles, hashtag garbage time, hashtag rise up, hashtag Wikipedia Club. Jones, Browns, Green, Marshall, Robinson. Odell not even in his top 5. Falcons, Fury. Julio, AB, Antonio Brown. AJ Green, Odell. So you had Odell at 4. Tom Brady. Thanks, Tom, for commenting and watching.
Oh, friend of the show.
Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, AJ Green, Des Bryant, Terrell Pryor. And then one of them is, here's one, because I know this was mine. Warlord Starcraft goes, Michael Thomas is better than Odell Beckham Jr. Think about that for a sec. Michael Thomas is better than Odell Beckham Jr. Yeah. No, that I had him higher than Odell. I want to say I had Odell at 4, maybe 5 on my list. But even with that, maybe you can look into that. That's why I said maybe might be a little overrated. He's definitely overhyped, but a little overrated to where if I'm looking if we even revisited that conversation of top 5 wide receivers, there's a case for him to be in the top 5. It's not like you're saying he's not a top 5 altogether. You could put him out, you could put him in, but I would put Antonio Brown ahead of him. I would put Julio Jones ahead of him. I put Michael Thomas ahead of him only because of the season Michael Thomas had last year.
Yeah.
But at the highest, if I was being the most generous to Odell, he's the 3rd best wide receiver in the league, because there's no way I'm putting him above Julio and above AB.
Yeah, I mean, I love both those wide receivers, and I don't think that's wrong. Both very good. You know that I'm high on Mevins this year because I really believe that
you had
the Broncos,
him in your rankings.
The Buccaneers are going to be a good team this year.
You even got a comment from James McDaniel on that with good call Mike Evans at number 1.
I like Mike Evans
you had him at number 1
because I some people are going to get mad at me for saying it, but I feel good about these Buccaneers this year. I think this offense is going to be hot. Just plain and simple, I think you got it right with the overhyped. People put too much on Odell, and unfortunately part of it's kind of brought upon himself. But, that's what it means to be a wide receiver in the NFL. So, overhyped, sure. Overrated, no. Definitely too talented for that.
And I'm looking at some of the guys because I'm looking in the tags to see Amari Cooper was one of them.
Of course.
Jordy Nelson was in my top 5. Julio, Odell, AB, Mike Evans were the ones that I had tagged for our Blog Talk Radio one. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of not to beat a dead horse, this is probably going to be our shortest segment of the podcast, but overrated maybe a little because, like I said, if on his best day, third best wide receiver in my book, Julio Jones and AB are always going to beat him out. Plus, it kind of takes away from you a little bit when I'm saying, now that you have this other great wide receiver, Brandon Marshall's pretty solid. I'll say pretty good wide receiver because I feel like great's being
like
too
that
crazy.
You went from great to pretty all right.
I mean, well,
he's a great wide. He's a good.
Solid.
He's decent.
Solid. If I had him in my
he's slightly below average. He's really pretty shitty.
If I had him at my number 1, I'd be happy. But now that you brought in Brandon Marshall, now I am expecting good things from you. And I know people are going to say, well, you can't do it with one wide receiver alone. But maybe a little overrated, but definitely overhyped. Any last comments before we wrap this whole shindig up?
No, I'm excited to watch the Giants play football. I think they're going to kick some ass this year.
I can't wait. I mean, we didn't talk about it, so I'll ask you really quickly.
All right.
JPP comments, 19-0. What do you think?
18-1.
18. They lose to the Patriots
in the Super Bowl.
18-1. The Patriots. Sean Anderson. How happy would he be if the Giants go 18-0 and the Patriots beat them in the Super Bowl?
He would die in ecstasy. He would move off into nirvana.
Do you guys think he was happy when that team came back against the Falcons? I don't even want to know how happy he would be.
If you've seen a lot of South Park and you know Randy Marsh like I know Randy Marsh, you know what I'm talking about.
And to be honest, I mean, Sean with the mustache and kind of how hairy Sean is in general.
Kind of works.
Sean could be a Randy Marsh lookalike if he wanted to. Sploosh. Could be a Randy Marsh lookalike. But this is where you guys come in. Let us know down below. What do you think of Odell? Is he overrated? Is he overhyped? Are we idiots for kind of saying and bringing up the question? Let us know what you guys think down below in the comment section. I want to thank you guys for either watching on YouTube or listening on Blog Talk Radio. You can also hit us up on Twitter. Mark is at @2E's Mark Weber. I'm Ricky Widmer. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Also check out patreon.com/Most Valuable Podcast. I want to thank you guys one last time for either watching and or listening. And as always, have a good day, everybody.